Welcome, Ashton Forbes. Thank you for joining me today. And today we will not be talking about, we will not be explaining what happened to MH370. This is not a podcast where we will be going into it or explaining. There are so many other videos where you have explained. I'll link all of them in the description. People go and watch them. They're all explained in detail. And I think you have a talent to explain things, complex things, very what's the word, like coherently. So even for a foreigner like me, everything was clear. And so we will just go through curious moments that I kind of noted for myself watching your live streams and other podcasts, and just question sort of like strange world that we live in right now, because I think a lot of people are confused. um Okay, so first thing that I found interesting was because watching other YouTubers covering this story, we're told that the radars were not tracking the airplane. And the reason was that either because the plane disintegrated, or there was electrical failure, or just there was some sort of like what is like electrical outage. But you said that it's not possible.
Yep. It's
Why
not.
is that?
Look at how radar works. So radar is ranging and detecting. So what they do is a radar transmitter will shoot an electromagnetic wave beam at an object. So imagine this Forbes cup is the object, and I'm going to shoot a beam at it. What happens is it hits it and it bounces back. And that's how we figure out where the object is. That's how radar works. So you can't make a plane go dark off radar. So what they're talking about is they're actually talking about something called the ACAR system. So there's a computer built on board, and that's what's transmitting the data that when we go onto the website, we see where the plane is or whatever. And so that went dark. So the plane disappeared off the ACAR system. But that's just a computer system on board. If the power goes out on board, the computer is going to go off, right? And the radar thing is so wild that they were somehow able to convince people that like this plane wasn't being tracked by radar, because they came out a couple days later and said, oh, yeah, military radar was tracking the plane. Because, of course, military radar was tracking the plane, because you can't make a plane go dark off of radar unless you're blocking the radars or jamming the signals somehow of the electromagnetic waves hitting the plane. If you look, there's a picture out there from the Royal Aeronautical Society 2019. They did this presentation, and in it, they pulled up the radar, all the radars and their range all throughout the Andaman Sea and the Malacca Straits, where we lost contact with the plane, like finally, where the military radar lost contact. There was 5 radars still in range. 5. And it's not like it was from one country, 3. Because they tried to claim one of them's Indonesia. They had multiple radars in range. And there's no excuse at all. Like, there's just this story. It's not even been corroborated. Just a story that, well, Indonesia's radars was just like off. Like, what? They were just off? What do you mean? That seems like the last thing you would ever turn off from a military perspective on the night where this plane disappeared. And then there was India has radar on the islands of Nicobar Islands, Car Nicobar and Blair, Port Blair. Those should have seen it. Why has India never said anything? And then lastly, Thailand. Thailand had radar as well. They've never spoken up. So you really have to ask yourself a question. When you look at the actual facts, why are 3, 4 different countries just completely silent about where they saw this plane? And why is there this weird misinformation about how radar works and how the plane's like radar was turned off, when it's not the plane that you would turn off for radar, it would be the radars themselves?
So this is just purely disinformation.
It's just putting 2 and 2 together. The radar thing is probably about 6 months old or so in terms of how, in my investigation, searching for it. It's incredible how much is out there. But to me, this is what I tell people. And this is, I think, the ultimate point, is that the mystery of MH370 could and can be solved at basically anyone at any point. It doesn't take advanced degrees or any specialized knowledge. The evidence is all out there. And some of it is just plain in your face, like the radar thing. And what's incredible is how we've kind of just been brainwashed to ignore common sense in so many cases around this plane. And I think it's because if we look at common sense, we come to a very different story of what happened in the plane compared to what we're being told.
And to that, my next question is, Wall Street Journal talked to somebody from Rolls-Royce, and they found out that the plane sent signals 4 hours after it disappeared. And according to letter to Ashton Forbes, the guy says that it landed on Diego Garcia 1856. So that means for about 2 hours, the signals should have come from Diego Garcia. Is it somehow possible to get this information sort of demand like by law from Rolls-Royce?
Rolls-Royce is a private company, so no. I also do
Oh,
quick correction to your statement is
oh,
that the letter to Ashton Forbes says at 1852 it arrived at our base, which yes, you're
oh,
implying Diego Garcia, but it could be possible there's
oh.
another base that it went to and then went to Diego Garcia.
Flight MH370 arrived at our base by our hand at 1856 UTC after we picked it up, mid-air, outside the island of Great Nicobar.
The reason why I bring this up is that there's this time gap. So it's possible this plane went somewhere else. People got boarded or whatever. They put the fire out in the plane, and then the
Where's the
plane.
time lap? Where's the time difference?
So 1840 UTC, which is when we think this plane's disappearing in the Nicobar Islands over there, is around 2:40 a.m. I want to say,
Yeah.
and if the plane is flying directly to Diego Garcia, I think it takes 4 to 6 hours probably from that point to get over there. And there are people on an island just north of Diego Garcia, like 15 people on a small island. It's called, I always say it wrong, Cuvo Haduvo, something like that. I'm probably saying it backwards, but they saw the plane in the early morning hours. Now, the problem, I believe, if I'm doing my time zones correctly, is because that's west, rises in the east, sets in the west. Yes, because that's west of that region, you're gonna have this time change where the sun, like the amount of time basically between where our place is and where those people saw the plane is like 6 hours, 4 or 6 hours at least. So the question here is, if the plane's being like teleported, like I'm claiming in these videos, what happened to the plane between those 4 hours? How could it go directly to Diego Garcia and those people see it in the Maldives 4 hours later?
Oh,
You know
what?
what I'm saying?
Wait. So do you think okay, so the pre Diego Garcia was elsewhere, and that's the only reason why those people near the Maldives could have seen that in the morning.
Yeah, I think this plane, I mean, I've been saying it many times, I'm just going to say it. I think this plane was teleported in the MH370 videos in the Nicobar Islands, roughly 20 minutes after the last radar contact that we had, teleported somewhere to the west near the Maldives. When that letter to Ashton Forbes says that, I don't really know what that means with respect to that time, but I do think that that time is interesting that they bring up because it's a time that nobody's ever really brought up as relevant to MH370. Um, Sorry, I think there was, what was the other question you had on regarding that in that question? The
Yeah, I
second.
just wanted to know I just for some reason naively thought that Rolls-Royce knows that
Oh
the
yeah.
signals came from, and
I want to address that part. That part's actually the great part of your question, which is there was a report that came out that Wall Street Journal, and they ended up having to retract this, that Rolls-Royce said that the engines were still transmitting. Now, the Minister of Defense, who was the number one official in charge, he denied the report. He said, nope, that report's bullshit. And this was weird because of when this report came out. Because this report came out, I believe it was around March 12th, 2014, just a few days after. So they had been searching in the South China Sea, and now they'd switched and they started searching in the Andaman Sea, in the Nicobar Islands and Malacca Straits. And then this report comes out that says, no, the plane has still been flying. Now, why is this important? Because everybody's thinking the plane crashed somewhere in the water over in the South China Sea or whatever. And so they had to dismiss this report because that report would indicate what? Hijacking, abduction of the plane. Plane can't be flying for that long. How it can't have crashed then, right? You're saying the plane was still in the air. So they had to previously dismiss that report. Also, that Rolls-Royce engine data probably has some telemetry data or something, some way on it for us to figure out like what the status of this plane was. So that data had to be hidden. Rolls-Royce knows what happened to this plane, and who controls Rolls-Royce? The intelligence communities. So UK government or US government comes to them and says, you can't reveal this information for legal reasons. Here it is. Anything can be done about it. That's how easy it is. So yeah,
okay.
they knew. And And then what's funny about that is then they release the satellite pings that say, okay, no, this plane was flying in the air. It flew until it ran out of fuel, but it didn't go to Diego Garcia. It flew to like the South Indian Ocean, like as
Oh,
far
it
away
was
from each
them?
other.
Rolls-Royce did that?
No, the U.S.
The
intelligence
Oh, oh,
leaked that information. It's funny.
oh,
I'm not
okay.
even making this up or exaggerating. Literally, U.S. intelligence sources, read the news articles, March 13th, 2014. U.S. intelligence sources leaked to the media that the plane went to the South Indian Ocean. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay. Why are we believing U.S. intelligence sources when it looks like the plane went to Diego Garcia military base? Like, makes no sense to me.
Okay. What is your thought on the emergency transponders, ELTs? We were told that it did not go off because there was like a gradual descent into the water or the aircraft lost its power, but and that there was no backup power.
And the ELTs are an amazing piece of evidence that almost never get referenced. There are 4 redundant emergency transponders on this plane, 4 of them that only go off when the plane crashes that cannot be disabled. Did any of them go off? Nope. How can you say a plane crashed? No. So do you know what the investigators then claimed based on this evidence? This is the reason why you've got these guys going, oh, well, the pilot ran it out of fuel. And then he decided to like slowly, softly land it into the ocean. And then it just sank into the ocean. And that's why we
Yeah.
never found
Yeah, I
anything.
heard that one. I also heard that
That
there
is
was no power.
that is like insane fan fiction. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I also the other one is that there was no power, but the ELTs apparently can just get activated.
Yeah.
However, they were not able to transmit because there was no power. They got activated, but the activation was not transmitted because there was no power.
I'm not sure about all of that, but at least one of those is completely redundant, not related on the power systems, I'm pretty sure. So no,
Okay.
I've never heard any logical argument. I had never heard those arguments, but I'll have to double check and see if those are actually true or not. But no,
Okay.
it would be a kind of silly system if you didn't have power and the emergency transponders don't work. I mean, it's kind of a big problem.
I don't know. I just read stuff on the internet, so
No,
I
that's
don't
fair.
know. Okay.
But yeah, so no, I
Okay.
think that's a big issue though, because yes, you need these transponders to go off. I mean, people really, I think, have lost sight of a plane crashing into the ocean leaves a massive debris field. A lot of the plane floats. Planes are made out of light metals and plastics. We should have found a massive debris field of bodies, luggage, flotation devices. There's 1,000 pounds of flotation devices on the airplane. Even if the plane cracks open at the bottom of the ocean, this stuff's all going to float to the top. And they found nothing. Guys, come on, man. The plane didn't crash in the ocean somewhere. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And another strange thing is how the phone of the passengers were still ringing for the next few days, and it was just not couple of phones, but I think 18 people they reported that happening, and I was actually so disappointed when this didn't come up in Candace Owens' interview because it was just for me this is the most crazy creepy moment, and I was yeah. So, but the thing is, I
Mhm.
personally do not care if this is UFOs or this is something else. I'm not forcing any outcome here. I just this alone means that it didn't crash. To me, that was the moment when I was like, okay, there's definitely something is here. So, what do you think about the speculation? Or, I mean, do you have any like speculations why did the families get text messages that the passengers were dead? Why do you think somebody did that?
So that maybe I'm misunderstanding just based on the last question, the context. The context of that is that the officials texted the families.
Oh, officials did it. Sorry. Okay, I didn't know that.
When the officials decided that they were going to rule everybody dead on the plane, the officials texted the families instead of telling them in person. And the reason is because they knew they were lying to the family members and they didn't want the blowback. And they knew the family members were going to freak out because the family members the whole time knew they were being lied to. This is an often underlooked aspect of the case. When the family members involved know they're being lied to, you should be listening to the family members. When they make a movie about this, the big blunder for the media was listening to the officials and not to the family members. the most invested people are the families, right? You're looking for your family, like what's the newest evidence? And when they're not telling you anything and literally roadblocking you on evidence that there's no reason to hide from you, you know there's something wrong. And that's what was happening with the families. And so when there's no evidence whatsoever of the plane or anything like that at all, and then the officials are going to say, we're going to rule your loved ones dead when they could be out in an island, Gilligan's Islanding somewhere or something like that. Like it's a slap in your face.
It just feels redundant. It just feels there's no why. It just makes no sense. Why would you send such a text message? It's so strange behavior. And yeah, it's suspicious.
Not strange at all when you realize that there literally was just a cover up happening. When you realize there's a cover up happening, you realize these people are ashamed, especially if you're Malaysia, because if you're Malaysia, you're being strong armed by the United States government. The United States government's the one that pulled this off, and they basically said, we're going to give you $1 billion in aid if you cover this up. But if you don't, bad things are going to happen. Really, really bad things are going to happen. And, you know, the prime minister was a puppet at the time. He got caught in a kleptocracy scandal for worth $700 million in his own bank account the very next year, after he's shaking hands with Obama and saying the plane crashed somewhere where we never found it. So, but the point being that I want to mention the phones ringing. The phones were ringing, and the government also ignored that. So it was actually 19 family members signed a joint statement to the government begging them to look into the fact that the phones were still ringing. One person proved it on television. They have their phone ringing wherever it's not going to voicemail. And then it's weird. This part's the weird part. Watch this, guys. I'm going to show you a magic trick. Everyone will know that there's this story that, well, oh no, phones can still ring when it's like off or underwater or whatever. If you actually Google MH370 phone still ringing, you will find the exact same guy went on every single mainstream media station and pulled it and said the same bullshit about phones still being able to ring while they're underwater. His name's Jeff Kagan, Jeffkagan.
Is when you place a phone call on a wireless phone, you place the call, you press send. What happens is you start hearing ringing, but the other phone isn't ringing yet. The network has to find the phone, and then they have to send the call there. If it doesn't find the phone after a few minutes, after a few rings, then typically it disconnects, and that's what's happening. So they're hearing ringing, and they're assuming it's connecting to their loved ones, but it's not. It's just it's the network sending a signal to the phone, letting them know it's looking for them. Now, my wife...
I couldn't believe this, but when I started actually looking into like who was saying that you can, because phones can't ring when they're underwater or they're disconnected or at the bottom of the ocean or away from your cell phone service, they don't ring. They don't ring. You can test it. Or, you know, any of these cases, there's no way the phones could have been ringing if the plane was under the ocean. And they needed some patsy to go on TV and say that the phone, that no, it's still possible because of magic, blah, blah, blah. It's like, just do it right now. Turn your phone off and show me on TV like the guy did, because he showed it. Yeah. Of course, they didn't do that. So this guy's name is Jeff.
I think it's
Kagan.
doubt.
Yeah.
It's about seeding doubt. As soon as you see doubt, that's it. People just stop going deeper and investigating and being suspicious. But that was the moment where I was like, okay, the plane is somewhere on land.
That's exactly it, though. It's about seeding doubt. You nailed it. And that's what they did with this case, was that all it took was some official or the media to say the plane went in the South Indian Ocean, and everybody believed it without question, even though there was no corroboration from anyone. There's no eyewitnesses that saw the plane there. It's an active shipping route. Someone would have seen a piece of debris in the ocean. Nobody saw anything. There's no reason to believe the plane went in the South Indian Ocean, except for Inmarsat's satellite pings that don't even clearly indicate the plane went in the South Indian Ocean. There's some pings. And that company is also controlled by U.S. intelligence. It's like, okay, man, you got to give me at least, like, anyways, we can go to the next question, but I just think it's crazy.
No, the same thing works really well under your posts and videos. The random person would just comes in, and then I saw comments, oh, debunked, this is debunked, bro. I saw, and then that's it. Somebody new who is really looking into it, they just like go into the comments, and just one comment can just put them into oh, this is, I'm not going to go into this. And there's also this stigma. If you believe in something outlandish, then you're immediately labeled as conspiracy theorist, like, oh my God. And then everybody's ashamed of that. And that's the thing. It works really well and it's really effective. Just one word and that's done. That's really annoying, to be honest.
That's
But
how it works. That's how the brainwashing works. And that's why they need control over social media, because social media is a powerful reinforcer or validator of belief systems, and it can do that. And if it's not, and it also can break down the brainwashing in the same way that this whole investigation has. So once you start asking these questions, it destroys that brainwashing, even in the UFO community. And like you, I don't really care what the answer is, but my favorite question, real quick, on the UFO community, I just want to bring this up, is what is the power source for your flying saucer that's flying around in the sky that's doing impossible things? Because from a physics perspective, there's no power source known to man that could possibly allow a flying saucer to do any of this stuff. So that would mean they would need some exotic form of energy, or they would have to have an understanding of the universe and physics that we don't currently have right now. And when you ask that question, you realize, whoa, that's a much bigger question than like, oh, is it aliens? Like, who cares if it's aliens? Tell me about, is free energy real? Like, that's a big thing. That's a scary thing. That's a national security thing.
yeah. Okay, so the next is the secret cargo that recently came up. So we know there were 2.5 tons of lithium-ion batteries, and
Were actually no dangerous goods on board, just some special load being loaded consisting of several tons of mangosteens, which apparently had a tendency to leak juice and water and therefore had to be checked closely. The no-talk message confirmed that the cargo had been checked and that it wasn't leaking, but what it didn't say was that there was also nearly 2.5 tons of lithium-ion batteries loaded on board. But these batteries were individually packaged and stored in such a way that they were not considered dangerous goods, and they have therefore been ruled out as a possible cause for what's about to happen.
And it was not reported to the pilot that they were lithium-ion batteries, because the reason apparently is because they were individually packaged and stored in a way that they were not dangerous, and that's the reason why they were not informed. They didn't inform the pilots, but instead they informed the pilot there were mangosteens that they were gonna leak, and that was the only thing that was informed to the pilot. And apparently, by the way, 2.5 tons of lithium batteries is, for those in Europe, it's 2,000 to more than 2,200 kilograms. That's a lot. And apparently that's caused the fire. But you also mentioned something about secret cargo.
Yeah. So first, I want to correct the math on that too. I saw Mentor Pilot got this wrong on his video, because
He did? Okay.
Yeah, he said it was 5,000 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, just 5,000 pounds of electronics equipment. The amount of lithium-ion batteries is reported as 221 kilograms, or 487 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, which is still a lot, way too much. In fact, lithium-ion batteries got banned as cargo in passenger planes right after this. In fact, it was already starting to become a big issue then, and now we know they're very dangerous. We hear about them a lot more now, but and it was because you don't want to have that in your passenger plane. You're putting all those people's lives at risk. So they had those batteries. There was also the mangosteens. Now the mangosteens were separate cargo, but weirdly, when they looked into the fire aspect, the only thing they looked into was a hypothesis that they invented, which was that the humidity of the mangosteens caused condensation, and that this water then dripped onto the lithium-ion batteries and caused them to explode.
Oh.
And then they said, well, that's silly, and they ruled it out. And that's how they ruled out. Literally, if you go look at the official report, that's literally how they ruled out the batteries as not being the cause. And you're like, well, that's the only reason. How are you going to conclude that's the only way the batteries could have started on fire? The number one way, because I've talked to experts, that batteries like this start on fire is defects. And guess what? They were put together that day, March 7th, 2014. So, and by the way, they also missed 2 security screenings. So to me, the answer, if you're looking for an answer of what happened to the batteries, there was just defect in one of the batteries and it exploded. It was really common and still pretty common.
And is it guaranteed that they're going to explode and they don't need somebody to make it happen? They can do
If
on their own?
so, it's called thermal runaway. Is that basically once one of these batteries hits the point where it just pushes through the limit, either through a defect or it heats up too much or whatever, then it begins to just start on fire. And because we use lithium ion batteries for a reason, they have a huge amount of energy density storage. That's the reason why we use them. Can make your laptop or your phone run for a while, or your car. Now, the downside is when you have a huge amount of energy, what happens? You have a huge release of energy. And if you're slowly releasing this energy in the form of fire and heat, it's going to last for a while. So you can't put these batteries out. There's no way to put them out once they've started. This is what, again, it's called thermal runaway. And once I learned about thermal runaway and these batteries being on the plane and saw that all the witnesses corroborated a fire event, it becomes extremely obvious. There was a bunch of planes that burnt up just like this. So it becomes obviously a fire event. And we also found out that the batteries were in the forward cargo bay right next to the electronics bay. And the electronics bay is where all the equipment, like, you take that out, the plane's going to go dark. So in my opinion, it's pretty clear that the batteries were stacked up against the wall. They burnt through the wall of the electronics bay, and then they damaged caused an electrical fire, made the plane go dark. And it's like, oh, well, why would you cover that up? Well, there are the videos. Now, the secret cargo, because there's two aspects to this. One is we still have like 2,000 or like, I don't know how much, 4,500 pounds of electronics equipment that we still don't know what that is. We know some of this stuff was batteries, but this other stuff, like, what is this electronics equipment? Is it secret microchips that are going to China, or is it just walkie-talkies, right? There's a big range on what that could be and how important it could be. There's also this secret cargo that supposedly was loaded at the last minute. And the Russian GRU report even mentions this secret cargo as well. It was about 89 kilograms, I want to say. So relatively small, but some cargo that was loaded last minute into the plane. And the Russian GRU report, which could be disinformation, maybe not, I don't know, seems more and more likely as the days go by. Not only did it blame the U.S. Navy, but it claimed that 2 SEALs, Navy SEALs, were on the Alabama Maersk guarding some cargo, and then they both mysteriously died, and that
What's
they were the
Alabama
one.
Maersk?
Alabama Maersk is a shipping boat that was made famous by the movie Captain Phelps. That was real story that happened. Tom Hanks was in the movie where some pirates came and
Oh,
took
yeah.
over the boat. Yeah, they do memes about it. I'm the captain now. That's the boat. So this is real, by the way. The fact that same boat was then later supposedly used to transport cargo that got onto MH370. And it's also true that the two guys, one of them's name is Matt Kennedy, and the other name is evading me right now. They both suspiciously overdosed at like 6 a.m. in their cabin at the exact same time. Really odd. It's a very mysterious case. I looked into it, and it seems something's wrong with it. Point being, something seemingly did get aboard the plane. If I had to wildly speculate, which I'm going to do because screw it, maybe it's whatever mechanism they use to ignite the batteries. Right now, the batteries aren't just an accidental thing. Maybe those battery fires were started on purpose at a specific point because they knew the plane would have to turn around. Just a thought.
Yeah. Now about the videos. So the videos appeared in May 2014 on Reddit first, right? And then they were sent, no, not on Reddit.
No, so, and they might go before this. The earliest we were able to date them back, realizing we didn't really start searching and digging into this till like 10 years after the videos had already been on the internet. But the videos say in the description of the video say received March 12th, 2014. And it says source protected. Somebody typed that in there. Now, so, if you believe that, if you think this is all fake, if you think somebody faked that, then I guess somebody lied about that. And it's clear, though, that somebody's now painting a story about the plane. Because, I mean, you don't put received March 12th, 2014.
Yeah, it's not necessary. Yeah.
Why would you add that in there?
Yeah.
Now, the published date on the Regicided now, which is the oldest version we could find, is May 19th, 2014, which is about 70 days, 6 weeks or so, 10 weeks or so after the plane disappeared. And you kind of wonder, why this delay? If you received it then, why not? And was it out somewhere else? Did this person just pick it up somewhere because it just randomly appeared somewhere on some website and they downloaded it? Hard to say. And then the second video, this is another weird aspect that almost links Regicide Anon to the leakers of the videos. The second video, the first video just says satellite video, airliner, and UFOs. The second video is the drone video. So the first video is like looking down like this. The second video is a drone looking at horizontally from a completely other side of the plane. So completely opposite angle of the plane. And it's in thermal, which it's funny. I was thinking about this the other night when I was talking about it on stream that not only has there never been a fake military video to any level of quality like this before, there's never been a fake thermal video either. I don't even know. Some people, I mean, how would you even begin to fake a thermal video? I have no idea. I think you would fake a thermal video by using a real thermal video. So the second video comes out. So the first video is published May 19th. The second video says in the description, received June 5th, 2014. And then it was published June 12th, 2014. So if we believe the story here, there's a story being told. And this is, again, now another layer that if somebody was hoaxing this, you now need a storyboard. You need to like have a story because they're telling us, I received this video, it was leaked to me March 12th. I published it May 19th or May 19th. Maybe I'd had to be told what I'm even looking at. What is this? You're telling me this is a real leaked video? How would I know, right? And then after they publish that video, they make a Twitter account 3 days later, March 22nd, or May 22nd. May 22nd, they make a Twitter account, Regicide. First tweet, watch this video before it's deleted. Links to their satellite video. Yep. You want me to pull it up? I'll pull it up so you can see it. I can see the look on your face.
No, I didn't know that they made after 3 days. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So
3 days
they were
after
really
that was
concerned.
published, they made a Twitter account. So yes, it probably was published by Regicide on May 19th. And that was probably the first one version that was out there because the way they were acting was like, watch this before everything's deleted. And why would you say that? Like, I mean, maybe you could say you're the hoaxer, but they're not a big following. They only had like a few hundred followers, I think, if at the most. So it makes you question in terms of, you know, what was going on with this whole, you know,
So
this saga,
that's
whether or not you
exactly
believe it's
my
fake.
question because they knew that it was going to get deleted. They knew that. So that's the thing. Why did they leave the videos online? Why did they could have easily gotten rid of these videos? Why did they leave them online?
The
Maybe
government?
do you think whoever is behind it? Yeah.
No, I don't think the government, I think the government probably knew there was a breach, but in order to like actually like you can't delete stuff from the internet. That's the part where like I'm surprised people think that they can just delete something from the internet. You can try to delete something. The more you try to delete it, the more people are going to think it's real, right? The better thing is you just don't want, if nobody believes it's real, it doesn't matter.
No, but I think it's still like it was back in 2014. This was not being shared. And if they have technology like that, they could easily gotten rid of these videos. At least that's what I think. And I thought maybe they needed these videos as an evidence to prosecute Edward C. Lin. Maybe they
Maybe.
needed them to stay there as an evidence. Otherwise, maybe there's other ways of proving it, but yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, but
weird.
here's the story though, right? So there's Regicide Anon says, please spread this video before it's pulled. And he tags MH370. Look at this, 0 likes. Alt
Yeah.
angle of airliner abduction just received. So remember what I told you? It said received June 5th. So this is June 13th. And then he published it June 12th. So the next day he tweets and puts the link to it.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, this is crazy. Like you look at that, you're like, okay. So there's really, in my mind, only two options. Either Regicide Anon's the hoaxer or this whole thing's legit. Because Regicide Anon's telling a clear story. Like this was leaked by somebody and leaked to me. And what's wild about that is when I was watching the videos, and I've been talking about Edward Lin a lot, the guy that leaked the videos. I watched those videos so much over the course of like 2.5 months that I was like, I'm in the mind of the guy that leaked these videos. And I identified him as a guy that was a patriotic American military member who leaked these videos, who maybe didn't know what they were looking at, like panicked, had an emotional reaction. And it's all based on the details, like the videos being cropped. It doesn't look like whoever leaked this was like a spy or anything like that. And that lines up with like what Regicide Anon is basically saying, is that this got leaked onto the internet, as it's not, it doesn't seem like a spy situation, saying to watch it before it's deleted off the internet. And yes, to your point, like, could they have taken a harder stance to try to get it removed from the internet? Yeah. But keep in mind this, nobody that in 2014, nobody in their right mind. If it was like now where it's me doing this, then yes, 2024, the right move would be deleted off the internet for sure, 100%. It took 10 years for anyone to even begin to think that that video could be real. So you got to realize, like, back then, this was the best thing is in these cases, at least I realize it's not so much overt action. They want to be in the shadows. They want to touch things the least out there. In terms of like guiding people's perceptions and events like this, because anything they do is another vector that could be traced back to them, right? So even in situations like this, where if you did something like this, you don't want to go out there messing around with stuff unless you have to, because if you get caught, then it just implicates you further in the cover up.
Yeah, but also like from the video, letter to Ashton Forbes, the guy said, well, yes, but it was not our problem. He said that somebody, they caught him, but it was not our problem. We don't care. So it felt like they do all these stuff, but they don't even care to cover things up. It's not their responsibility, as if they're above law and they don't really even bother to, cover things up. It's not their job. They're too above it. That's the feeling I got from the way he said it.
Then in 2014, military footage of the event got published on YouTube. Not our problem. The person responsible for the leak was identified and taken care of. Not by us, not our problem.
Yeah, it could also be that there's just military versus like, just different people's jobs. Like the people's jobs who it was to teleport that airplane are probably not the same people's jobs it is to cover it up.
Okay.
And if it is connected to like defense contractors like Lockheed Martin or what have you, I need people to understand out there, Lockheed Martin has their own cyber hacker like group within their own company. And you can just justify whatever you want. Like what's their goal? To like improve Lockheed Martin on the internet? Great, whatever. I mean, they're basically just like hackers that you're paying to be on the internet and do whatever they need you, whatever Lockheed Martin needs them to do. They have their own private security forces as well. It could be Lockheed Martin responsible for covering this up, and the U.S. Navy is just out there doing operations. I'm just speculating and throwing that out there. But the ways that they go about disinformation and covering stuff up is way more nefarious than what I think people think. It's not twirly mustache villain stuff anymore. They just don't need to do that in this day and age, and it's not the right way to go about it because there's just so much forensic analysis that's possible. So a lot of it is more of just narratives and stuff people call like psi operations, things like that.
Yeah. So about the videos, you think that Edward Lin did not release them. He's not the one who sent them to this Regicide Anon, I think his name. He sent it to somebody else.
Yeah. So the one thing that isn't talked about enough with Edward Lin is that it's rumored in one of those articles that he had a pre-existing relationship with the FBI and NCIS. So the person in that article was speculating that he was probably a spy for us against China due to the fact that he was a Taiwanese American, like naturalized Taiwanese. So he spoke Mandarin. And so he had contacts. He did have contacts, and the government admitted they were trying to push it like he was a spy because he had Chinese and Taiwanese contacts. But if you're a spy for us, of course you have Chinese contacts. And he openly had Taiwanese contacts. They're our allies. What are you talking about, right? Like Taiwanese contacts. So the question then is, I would ask anyone out there, watch Edward Soraya, that's his new name now that he's changed. Watch his video out there. You tell me if this is a guy who you think is nefarious or not. He's not a spy. So to me, the story that makes the most sense for him to be the guy that leaked these videos is not a direct leak where he's talking with Regicide Anon. Here, you got to get these videos out, man. It's more of like he gave them to somebody else, somebody he trusted, and that person then did that and got them on the internet. That's what it feels like to me. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. You come to your own opinions. Of course, that's not something we can't just know. There are many details of this case that, because the case is so nuanced, there are only people involved can tell us for sure what the motivations were in their head for why they were doing what they were doing. But I think that Edward Lynn can answer a lot of those questions. Now, real quick, because you may ask, maybe not, but it's important, is that, yes, I have directly accused Edward Lynn of being the person responsible for these videos getting on the internet and then being leaked onto the internet. If he is not the guy, he should be reaching out to me to help correct the record. I have been trying to reach out to him, his lawyers, his sister, his brother-in-law. Nobody will respond to me. He changed his name in December of 2023, December 29th, at the end of the year. This was 2.5 months after I publicly named him as the leaker of the videos on multiple podcasts, huge platforms. You would think if he wasn't the guy, he would want to get in touch with me and correct the record instead of changing his name. So yeah, I'm very confident. He checks all the boxes. He pretty much has to be the guy that leaked the videos. And if he is the guy, it's all over. Like, if he comes out and says it, it's all over. So I get why he would be quiet. There's a lot at stake right now. But man, there's a lot at stake for humanity here too, from the positive side. So hope he
Yeah.
does the right thing.
I remember when you first mentioned his name directly, when you found him, and we've been following that for a year now. And just imagine your community, we're just listening, and we know this is the guy, and you're looking for him. So I think you published in your live stream his video, right? So I wake up, I open, and there is a title: "We found Edward Lynn." And then I'm like, "Oh my God." So I click on the video, and then, in the beginning you have intro, and I cannot listen to the voice of the pilot because it just gives me creeps. So I just fast forward, and I landed where Edward Lynn, hello.
Hello, my name is Edward Saraya.
I'm at Edward Lynn, and my heart stopped because I thought he's addressing us. I thought he was just addressing us. I was just like, and then it's like, and then it was like a hospice care, and I thought, what? This was just the whole time he was under your nose, and it was a surreal moment.
I wish that would have been an interview that I had been able to have with him, but we have to be realistic. Like, this guy took a deal. He took a plea deal. That's open information. And I've been saying this whole time, if he took a plea deal, he's not going to be able to talk about these videos, right? And now I think
he can go back to jail? Is it possible that?
100% yes. Oh yes, he can go back to jail for the rest of his life. Like, this isn't
So
a joke.
in his deal, it could be you're going back to jail. So it's possible
Forever.
legally
Like, because they dropped the espionage charges related to this, it could say you go back to prison forever if you break this deal.
Is it possible to request the conditions of his release? Is it public information?
I requested everything and anything that they have, and it was fully rejected. And that's why in one of my Twitter posts, you can see that FOIA rejection from the NCIS. My FOIA was rejected in total. It says specifically in total, because I asked for everything related to his case. And that was the head of legal from the NCIS signed off on that as well. And it was kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy, they say. And then they have the subsections I haven't memorized. Executive Order 13526, subsection or 1.4 letters C and D. Covert action and foreign policy or foreign engagement, whatever it is. Actually crazy. All that needs to happen, so crazy. All we need is just Edward Lynn to come forward, or the government can just declassify all the shit they're hiding about MH370. I've proven they're hiding a bunch of stuff. All my FOIAs get rejected whenever I ask about the plane. So just declassify that. It's going to say that we orbed the plane out of the sky with some magic orbs in the Nicobar Islands.
Okay.
And then, yeah, actually, I want to find out too, what actually happened to the plane. I assume they flew it to Diego Garcia, or it teleported to Diego Garcia, and then they took it apart there. And then some pieces somehow got in the water, and that's why it washed up in Africa. The part I have a struggle with is if they're going to throw pieces of the debris in the water, throw them in the water by Australia. I mean, that's what you're trying to tell people the plane crashed. So throw them in the water by Australia. Why would you throw them in the water over near Africa by Diego Garcia? That's the part where I'm thinking the pieces of the plane they found, which I do think are from MH370, I think they fell off the plane. I think they teleported this plane somewhere. and then it was still in the air, and then some pieces fell off of it, like all Boeing planes do. They just fall apart now, and this one was on fire. So, and then I think it landed, and that's why I think, though I don't think that debris was thrown in the water. I think the plane was like not necessarily actively on fire anymore after they zapped it out of the sky. I think that it was just smoking at that point, but it was already messed up, and some pieces fell off. And people found those pieces, and the military couldn't find the pieces because it's like if a piece falls off the plane, they're not gonna. How's the military gonna go
Yeah.
find it in the water? There's no chance.
But were those pieces the kind of parts of the plane that you could fly without?
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah, they were
Okay.
100%. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what people think. Because people are like, oh, there was a flapper on. It was a piece of the wing, 7 feet long. I'm like, the wing is 100 feet long. So if you go Google it, which I already looked this up, you can fly without a flapper on. You can actually
Okay.
land without one too. So nothing that was found was some critical piece of the plane that proves the plane crashed either. And this goes
Okay.
to show too the brainwashing, that same thing we were talking about earlier. People don't look deeper. They just go, wait, but debris was found. Like this is like if you're out there going, debris was found, you are an NPC. You need to like literally go about how you take in information and reevaluate it. If you're just sitting there regurgitating, but debris, you should, the first thing you should be doing is when you hear that is, okay, someone told you debris was found. What debris? Where? How much? Basic questions. When you
Yeah.
answer these questions, you realize it's not even enough to prove a plane crash, not even close. And you have to ask the question, why was it washing ashore in Africa and not in Australia? Nobody asked that question ever, as far as I can tell, except for like Florence Tchengi and one other investigator. Most people just don't ask questions that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I know that you have a good, like, positive feeling about Edward Sealand, but for some reason, I thought that, he was in the spy plane where, and then there was also a drone, and then there was also a spy plane, and I think he was there to oversee the operation because you don't really spy random commercial airliners, like, it's just not a thing, and he was there specifically, and I thought that he was there overseeing that everything went well, maybe even the orbs were released from his airline, maybe, and I think that he released maybe he showed the video to his friend because he wanted to show off, look what we can do. And maybe he showed both thermal and both of them. He just sent them and he didn't mean to show or release at all. That's what I believe. I really don't think he's the good guy here. But I might be completely wrong until he comes out and once we know the truth. But I truly believe that he was there to oversee the operation, that everything went well, and that he didn't mean to release them. He just wanted to show off to see to somebody, hey, like we can do this. And then that guy was, freaked out. And then that's the theory.
That would definitely be a twist. I can't actually refute that. It's a decent argument. This is where I tell people too, is that I'm not opposed to different theories and opinions. Of course, everybody can have them. And in a case this nuanced and deep, of course, there's going to be many different variations of different aspects of the story as well. I just want to, and that's why I like when you think, I like what you just put out there because it's actually based on like, your opinion of the mind state of a person, which of course everyone's going to have a different view on that. Absolutely. It could be that, his role was to relay information from the spy plane, which has these cameras all over it. One of them is going to have the drone on it. One of them's got this whammy footage on it, and relay that information to upper command. And he was one of these people they trusted. And the way he's acting afterwards would be consistent with somebody who was like in the know, trusted, what have you. The way they've kind of like when you watch that video, it's almost just as good as if I was interviewing him, because you can tell where his where his state of mind is now. You can tell what his connections are now, years after he's gotten out of prison, and he's still connected to the Navy, still connected to his master chief. Why is he still connected to all his Navy guys if they were trying to brand him as a traitor and a spy? Right? This whole thing is odd. If he went to jail for something that was so serious, a breach of national security, triggered at the highest levels, why are they? And he went to prison for 6 years after a plea deal, after them shaving off time. Why are they treating him like he's a buddy still now? Like it seemed, and you might be right. It does seem like he made some kind of major mistake, right? So maybe he was just too overzealous, and maybe he was bragging about what we could do. That would be a sick twist on this, honestly. He would be a hero for all the wrong reasons if that were the case. But I think that painting him as the hero is the right way here for multiple reasons. One, I hope it's true. And two, because when you paint him as a hero like this, it's like I love looking at his comments and seeing everybody go, "You're a hero that's telling us the truth," and what have you, because it puts so much pressure on you to realize that like people will support you if you come out and
Yeah.
whistleblow on this stuff. He would actually be a hero in a lot of people's minds if he comes out and says, "Okay, yep, we zapped the plane. I'm going to whistleblow. It was an illegal operation. We shouldn't have done it. We got magic tech." And it kind of gives him, because I think that's the truth. If he's out there listening, like, I think it's the truth. I think that if he were to come out and admit it, maybe they would try to put him in prison for the rest of his life. Well, no, maybe they will. But I think the court of public opinion will save him. Trump will be forced to pardon him just because of all the investigation I've done, just because of how much I've pushed that he's a hero for leaking this. I think that they will. I think you should consider it.
Okay. Okay. I'm just having other thoughts, but all right. So um I will throw out another idea, but and then I'll stop. So you know those I think you also mentioned in your latest in your last live stream that they're about the two Iranians on the airplane. And I was watching the mentor pilot's video, and where he says that you need expert knowledge of how aircraft should operate, like in detail, and you also need to know the airspace where it turned so that it doesn't go to the Thailand's monitored airspace. So everything was maneuvered very perfectly with an expert knowledge. And I think you also in comment section, I think somebody sent you a super chat, and then there's somebody needed to be on board of the airplane, and I thought those two Iranians are the perfect people to be, because we don't know who they are. They're like, we have no idea who they are. Random Iranian passports, and I thought, and also Philip Wood said the airplane was hijacked. He used the word hijacked. So how do you know it's hijacked? The only way you can know it's hijacked is there were people inside literally hijacking it. So that's just a theory I have.
Yeah, the part about the turnaround, I really don't like Mentor Pod's video. I think that a lot of these guys are just feeding on other people's opinions, and then they slowly become facts after enough people have repeated
Yeah.
them. If you
Yeah.
look at it's just the turn back is just the soonest turn back. It's a manual emergency turn back that the person did. So it's like if your plane goes dark and all of a sudden a fire breaks out, you're just turning around immediately. That's all that's happening there. They're not like the person isn't
Oh.
thinking in that plane, "Oh, I'm manually evading the radar space here." But that's not how radar works anyway. There's not magical lines where radar in the sky doesn't go past that point anymore. Like it's just, and this is the part where like people they don't understand radar, or I don't know what it is, but that's not how any of that stuff works. Now you may say, "Oh, there's this boundary where if you pass this, then you're technically in the zone of control of the other place." We're talking about a plane going off of radar here. We're not talking about like deviating communications or something like this. So I don't think there's, but the one thing that I think is important is that yes, it's not something one person could have pulled off. This is a very, very, very important point that a lot of people gloss over or just completely ignore. Making a plane go dark in the way that which it did is not something one person is going to pull off. It's certainly not within 64 seconds of the last publicly available communication, where it's just a normal communication, where no alarms of just guy going, "Good night, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. 64 seconds is not enough time to get up and go turn off all the APUs and all the power supplies in the airplane. And Mentor Pilot kind of alludes to this idea, but he doesn't really explain it, that there's some magical dial in the cockpit that just turns the power off on the plane.
It's not
That
true?
doesn't exist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in
It's
his
not
video,
true?
he kind of explained, because if I'm wrong, I apologize. But if I remember correctly from his video, he kind of alludes that this could just magically have been done from the cockpit.
Yeah,
If you
that's what
talk
he
to Captain Belaley, I always butcher his last name, and some other experts that looked into this a while back, they were sure it was not something that one person could have pulled off. There's like 4 different power supplies, and I think at least 1 or 2 of them you have to like manually get to. You can't just deactivate it from the cockpit.
Oh. Okay, I'm
So
glad you addressed that because it
yeah.
got a lot of views, that mentor pilot video.
Yeah, and I think that it's for a lot of people, people just kind of gravitate towards something that they can that can help make sense for them. You know, this is a mysterious incident, and the problem is it's been 11 years now, and at some point we have to stop thinking inside the box. Everybody just wants to go, well, it just had to be the pilot that did this because nothing else really makes any sense, right? Well, but there is. We have 2 videos of the plane disappearing out of space time, right? And we should have been already thinking about crazy stuff like that anyway. We've already reached that point. I think after the 10-year mark, we should be allowed to talk about like, did aliens abduct the plane or did it go through a black hole or whatever else? Because like, yes, it's silly, but it's also silly to think that like we didn't know where a plane disappeared to in 2014 that had like 239 people on it. Planes don't just crash without seeing it. Like a lot of people need to realize too, if the plane did crash anywhere on planet Earth, at least 3 different countries' satellite systems would have seen the debris field. Russia, US, and China, at least 3 within one day, no matter where it
Mhm.
was, anywhere on planet Earth. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So Philip Wood's
But
post, that means we can survive time dilation and teleportation, right?
sure, we can survive. Actually, I mean, there's no problem with surviving time dilation. Surviving time dilation is kind of a misnomer as well, because what Einstein taught us with general relativity is something called the frame of reference. And this is what's so important in time dilation, which means that for you and for me, my time will always appear to be moving normal. It's a weird thing to think about. It'll always appear to be moving normal. It's never going to change. That's not how time dilation works. Well, how time dilation works is with relativity, is that right now we look like we're talking in sync, you and I do on this video, right? But it would be weird if suddenly I were to be talking in slow
How are you doing
motion.
it? It's so real.
That
Okay.
was time. That was time dilation. I just enacted time dilation on you
Yeah.
right now, right? And you could do the opposite, where if I were to speed up my time dilation model, you could go really fast, and then you could talk really fast like this. And so that would be time dilation. That's how time dilation would actually work. And then from my perspective, in my frame, I would seem like I'm talking normal. But while you were listening, you'd be like, but it looks like you're talking slow or fast. But if we were to
Okay.
do this and keep this stream on for years and years and years, it would become apparent as I would be aging at a different rate. The me that's
Oh.
talking in super speed would start to gray. And the me that's talking in slow mo, you would be getting older, but I wouldn't necessarily be getting older. So time dilation is absolutely real, and it's been experimentally proven with the twin paradox. To explain what I just was going through there. But and humanly traversable wormholes are something that has been supported scientifically for since about 2020. Humanly traversable wormholes, meaning that you're not going to get spaghettified if you go through a wormhole and teleport to somewhere else, which is amazing to think about. The problem with MH370 and the reason why everybody's dead is an old school problem: fire, lithium ion battery fires. That's what took everybody out.
But how come then Philip Wood survived?
Maybe he didn't take out everybody. Maybe a couple
Oh.
people lived. And I'm not saying that you're going based on the Philip Wood picture on 4chan.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of evidence out there. And I think the overall story of MH370 is pretty clear. But it's possible that some evidence, including the Philip Wood picture, is not real. It's, the point of, I think that what people should do is you should look at all the evidence in totality, and you should kind of weight certain pieces of evidence. How strong is this piece of evidence for that piece of evidence? The Philip Wood picture, I think, is the strengths of that picture is that it says I was kidnapped by the military, I'm abducted. It has coordinates that are Diego Garcia that Philip Wood doesn't even mention in the post. The negatives of that is like, if this guy had a phone, why is he not doing anything else except for posting on 4chan? Like, why is he not emailing people like his girlfriend, calling them? Lots of different other things you could do. So it's hard to get a full grasp on that in general. But overall, it does look like the plane did go to Diego Garcia. Now, how many people lived or what have you? Like, you could also argue there was Facebook pictures in 2021 that show basically all of the crew members looking like they're living on Diego Garcia, like older versions of them. Some of them are less compelling than others. Some of them are pretty compelling. But does that mean that they're all alive on Diego Garcia? Not necessarily. My point being, lithium-ion battery fires are extremely dangerous, and 1 to 2 inhalations, and it's lights out, and you're not going to ever wake up again. So that's what would be much more scary to me. And now, in terms of what would happen to the passengers if they survived, they would become wards of the state, meaning that the United States military or whatever would, either put them in witness protection. They're going to live on Diego Garcia for the rest of their lives, or, you're going to drink a water bottle and go to sleep in Sleeping Beauty for the rest of your life, if you know what I mean. Now wake up.
But a letter to Ashton Forbes says that they're dead, but there are a handful of them are not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, go ahead.
So then it means that US, whatever, they killed people, right? Is that the conclusion?
That's hard to say. And if you look at that letter too, the way I would say to look at that letter or any letter anyone writes is look at it from their perspective as a human, from their lived experiences. They're probably not the person at the top that knows exactly everything. They're probably somebody that's been exposed from their angle of whatever their job responsibility was in the operation or what have you. So they're just speaking about it from their own personal opinion based on their own experience. Not everything they say is going to necessarily be 100% accurate. So that's why you're going to hear stuff like, well, the people died because either they were told the people died or they know somehow the people died, but they also know a couple people lived. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. When you get a letter, it's not going to be, you should rarely assume that everything you're reading is all true or all false. You should look at it through the lens of the person who wrote it in general. Now, for the letter for Ashton Forbes, there are a few broad takeaways that I think are clear. Is that that's certainly somebody who is supporting me and wanted me to keep pushing forward in a time in which I was thinking about stepping away, honestly, and just being like, you know what, it's not even worth it. They're also telling us a story about technology related to plasmoids very clearly. And then they're also telling us clearly that there was a black operation that the United States conducted or counter-espionage on Malaysian Airlines against China. The rest of the minute details, especially the ones we can't verify, I don't know. Could be real, could be fake, could be
what is
partially real.
insane, absolutely insane, is he said he has conducted hundreds of operations like these. And this is public knows nothing, under our nose, highest technology possible. And there all these people are conducting hundreds of operations and we know nothing about it. That just blew my mind.
I believe it. 100% I believe it. And I don't think they're all like with orbs and teleporting civilian airliners, but like operations in general where we just have like, imagine I have a bookshelf back here and, like people have with DVDs or books or whatever, and every single one is another operation. And it's just it's you play it out like a movie, right? Like it's a script and you play it out. That's what the CIA is doing. And that's what I think the letter to Ashton Forbes is trying to say is that we've got these scripts that we've played out, these stories over the years, and we've just got hundreds of them.
Do you think, Shawn Ryan's, sorry, I forgot his name. I think it's Shawn Ryan. He interviewed Michael Herrera, U.S. Marine.
Yeah.
Have you seen that about the
I know his story in general. In the
football-sized stadium? Yes, human trafficking. Do you think these are the same people?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm not advocating for Michael Herrera's story. I can't say whether or not it's true or false, but I think that a lot of these stories people have had are going to end up being real, and that there is this whole cabal, deep state, covert administrative elite, whatever you want to call them, people that have been exposed to this technology, that are in the know, they're in the club. And when you're in the club, you're above the law, and they're operating above the law. And with technology that's far beyond the paradigm of the public's knowledge at the moment. And they've been able to get away with it much easier than what the public really understands. A lot of people that would think that there's no way this could be real because there's no way they could get away with this. Turns out it's way easier, and it's super easy to brainwash people into not realizing that physics is real. Even basic stuff like science about our universe, extremely simple. So yeah, I think it could be a lot of crossover, and I think it's a multinational kind of syndicate as well. Whereas just like, once again, once you're in this club, you're in the club. And it's probably been going on since like World War II. You know, you look around at all the conflicts since then, and we have all these little skirmishes, or we're invading these like tiny little countries that have no chance against us, and we're just destroying them essentially, and you know, losing a bunch of lives of like American soldiers or what have you. Or we've got these proxy wars with Ukraine and Russia going on and all this stuff. This is exactly how I would expect it to play out if there's a deep cabal that's in charge, because these things don't change anything from the grander scales. We're just having these little fights to weaken this person, or to use a bunch of obsolete, weapons that are sitting in the shelves.
Yeah. So just one thing that's not really connecting for me, because I
Sure.
believe that the Philip Woods is. I think it's true that he posted that. I also think that that as the guy said that the passenger survived. So what's not connecting for me is that there were masks in the airplane, and the masks there was fire,
But
and there were masks. They were supposed to last 22 minutes, but the fire was way longer. And I think there was, I don't know, another half an hour that they could stay alive, but the plane was on fire for a longer period of time. So what's not really connecting for me is how did they survive the fire? Do you also find it weird,
well,
or?
not really. I mean, this is what I'm saying. I think they all died. I mean, that's why I told you. Like, there's no
Oh,
way, because like
okay.
there's just, I can't believe that they could start. Now, here's the thing. Now,
Yeah.
let's address this, because this is a good point, right? Is that a lot of people don't know that the masks. I mean, 22 minutes is stretching it. Is what I've heard is like it could be as little as like 12 minutes, and as long as 22 minutes. But when you just do the basic math, and when this plane went dark, when supposedly the fire would have started, to where the plane's in the coordinates in the videos, it's about an hour and 20 minutes. So you need to survive for an hour and 20 minutes with a mask that gives you 20 minutes of oxygen. And now let's think about it practically. Okay. The pilot is going to depressurize the plane, and they're going to fly low so that enough oxygen can get into the plane. The smoke is going to slowly accumulate because it's going to start circulating through the air conditioning system. So it's going to start circulating through the air conditioning system. So it's going to look like in the cabin, if you're a passenger, is going to start getting hazy. It's going to slowly start getting hazy in the cabin. And what's going to happen is going to be a lot probably like CO2 poisoning, where you're just going
Sorry,
to,
what's hazy? I don't know that word.
oh, hazy means like it'll start to look like there's stuff in the air a little bit, right? Or have you ever been on the plane where you can kind of see like this kind of smoke in the air, this like, you've never seen that before? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's not like you're
So
going to
it's
see
just
puffs of smoke necessarily, but it's going to start making the air look thick, like cloudy. It's going
oh,
to,
like
the
a
air will look cloudy.
smoke,
Yeah, like kind of smoky, but it'll be
but
very
this.
slight. Like it's going to start to
Okay.
build up, right? So you're not
Okay.
going to notice it at first.
Okay.
You
Okay.
might smell something as well. You might have a weird smell. And then you'll just pass out. And maybe some people will realize that something's wrong because they're going to smell something right away, right? And if you were smart, what I would do is grab the mask. Now, after that, I would realize the mask is never going to last, and I would grab a cloth or a wet rag and wrap it around my mouth, and I would go as low to the ground as possible because the smoke's going to be accumulated up
Up in
above
the
high, right? So I think that if somebody was smart and did something like that, or found a safe spot on the plane, they could maybe survive for the hour and 20 minutes, depending on how much. I mean, again, we're totally speculating. We don't know how bad the fire is or what have you, right?
Yeah.
And then the crew would have been battling the fire to try to keep it out, but the lithium-ion battery fire was never going to go out. So a lot of those people would have, in my opinion, succumbed for sure, as well as a lot of the passengers, if not all of them.
So the UPS flight that had similar thing, their windows in the cockpit were covered with smoke, so they couldn't see how to land. How do
Yeah.
you think they landed in Diogo Garcia or wherever?
Oh, well, that's the part where I kind of believe that after they zapped the plane, it probably just put out the fire. Now, why do I think that? Because the zap itself is an endothermic event. It's a cold event. It's black in the thermal video, which is the weirdest part of the video. You're like, what? If I was in any video, whether it's fake or real, I would expect that to be a white hot explosion of the plane just blowing up. That's what I expected to see at the end of the video. Instead, you see this black thing open up and then close, and the plane's just gone. Well, that's an endothermic event. So that's like actually the opposite of a release of energy. If an explosion is a white hole, a release of energy, then a black hole is an endothermic event, a sucking of energy in. And that's what we're seeing there. So an absorption of energy then, well, that's exactly what I would need to put out the batteries. I mean, just math from a physics perspective, like the whole problem with the batteries is they have a huge amount of energy in them. And that's why you can't put the fire out. And so early on, this is what I was telling people, is like, when I thought this was a rescue attempt, I'm like, did they use this to put the fire out? Because if it might serve a double purpose. It might teleport the plane and just drain all the energy out of the batteries at the same time. And if it did that, then wherever it shows up, because it's being absorption of energy means there must be a release of energy somewhere else. That's why I think it's teleportation. It's actually that simple. Is that if this is an endothermic event, an absorption of energy, physics tells us there must be a corresponding release of energy somewhere else. So this plane is showing up somewhere else, and it might not be on fire anymore, but it's still going to be steaming and smoking because the thing was just on fire. And you know what's weird? There was one of those islanders who saw the plane. She told the guy that came and talked to her that she saw steam coming out of the back of the plane. And she saw it flying super low, which was really interesting because she didn't say it was smoke. She said it was steam. Kind of makes you think that the plane wasn't actively on fire anymore, but still residually was, having some smoke coming off of it. And that always kind of lingered with me in terms of the overall story. So admittedly, there are holes in the story that doesn't quite make a ton of sense. Like we're missing something here about related to all this. And that's why we need Edward Lin to speak up, or the United States government to tell us. Like there's an angle where, and I'm not saying this is a major possibility, but where this was a rescue operation, or where this was something that went wrong. Like somebody speculated, what if we have some weird AI system, defense system, and it thought the plane was like a missile or something like that, and it accidentally deployed these magic orbs that are our missile defense system, against the plane. Could be something like that too, or it was just a horrible mistake. Now, that's not what I believe. I think it was an operation from the beginning, and then we teleported this plane with intent because of those semiconductor engineers on board. But, the reality is the only way we're going to know for sure is if they tell us. And I don't know, odds aren't great.
Yeah, I think that could be another reason why the airplane was remote controlled, because the cockpit was not visible.
Yeah, and it also could, yes. Yeah, if you were getting at that, absolutely. Certainly an aspect of remote controlling that could play a part. There's another data point, not necessarily connected to the remote controlling, that people bring up. So 1822 is when military radar supposedly is lost. Obvious bullshit. 3 minutes later, 1825, this plane's in the Malacca Straits, Andaman Sea. The computer system turns back on. That computer system that was supposedly off or whatever, just turns back on all of a sudden. What? How does this make any sense in any scenario? So let's say it was a rogue pilot. Okay, let's just use the narrative they're saying. It's a rogue pilot. You've turned off the computer system, and now at 1825, you're next to Indonesia. You just decide to turn it back on again. It's not like you can know that the radar was lost. You wouldn't know that. There's no way you could possibly know that while you're on the airplane. There's no like, am I being tracked by radar button? That's not a thing. So it makes no sense for anybody in a hijacking or any scenario to turn the computer back on. You would never do that if you're flying the plane away trying to escape. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why is this computer the answer is the computer didn't turn back on. They just faked it. They just put that into the data. They just added it into the Excel spreadsheet. Computer never turned back on. And we know it didn't, because Catherine T, a little bit later, sees the plane and it's black.
Dark.
It's dark. There's no lights on it. So if there's no lights on it, there's no power. If there's no power, the computer can't be on. So this is the part too where it's like people should probably be questioning that whole, like, did the satellite pings, did the computer really turn back on that 1825, or did they just make that up so they could tell this story of the plane going to the South Indian Ocean?
Yeah. So also you said that the 3 orbs could be operated by AI.
Yeah, and I'm more and more certain about that. Keep going.
As someone who has no idea how it works, how is the communication work with the source and the orbs? Is it like 5G? How is it operated? Or like Bluetooth? I don't know.
Great question. Could be onboard processing, could be a satellite uplink, could be a lot of different options, honestly. But that's the part where I think, to me, the thing, it's the vectoring of how the orbs are in a triangle spinning around the plane like this, like kind of how I'm doing in 3 directions. I just cannot imagine any conventional computer, even a supercomputer, pulling that off in 3 dimensions or on a moving plane that's flying at hundreds of miles an hour. Just didn't seem possible. When you look at it, the movements are too precise, too exact, too perfect. Either somehow those orbs are like locked in, where like if you were to pull a push, like they're all moving together somehow, or there's some kind of AI supercomputer that's managing that. And it looks very, very similar to how Elon Musk is landing these rockets on
Mm.
chopsticks, right? It's the same idea.
But
That's
what's
the
the
same
how
exact
does it
technology.
communicate the information?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to ask Elon Musk how he's managing
Oh.
that. But however they're doing that, I mean, that's really what the question really that you're bringing up is a matter of bandwidth, which is how much data can you send at once? You need enough data to be able to have enough data to vector the plane. And then the question is, well, how much data does it require to vector a plane like that? The thing about quantum computers that's so amazing, which is I'm pretty sure is what AI is going to, when we get sentient AI, they're going to be using quantum computers, is they become exponentially more powerful. So like a normal computer just gets more and more and more powerful like this, right? A quantum computer goes like this.
Mm.
So quantum computers, it starts to become, it doesn't even matter how much data processing requires because you get to the point where you have infinite processing capability. The bigger issue is if it takes a bunch of data and you have to upload that data and download that data to update, that's a bigger problem. If you have an onboard computer that can do that, and it can be a very small device potentially, where you can, if you figured out the secrets of free energy and AI, then you don't even need an upload at all. Then the orb can do it by itself. Or if it has some kind of upload, maybe it just needs update instructions, relay instructions. It's kind of hard to speculate. The bigger thing is, does the military or government have an AI that's more advanced than what the public's aware of? I think most people would say probably. Yeah, why not? Right? But then the question is, do they have AGI, advanced general intelligence? Have they developed Skynet? Have they developed a sentient AI and they're hiding that from us? I don't know. I'm speculating, no idea. But my opinion is probably, and
Okay.
that scares me.
Mm. So, do you think the airplane was teleported from air to air? And when you teleport it, is airplane in motion? Does it end up in motion as well? Is there some sort of inertia or does it halt to stop? And also, is it possible to teleport onto land? Do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, it's possible to do all those things, and inertia reduction can be manipulated. So it is possible for the object to be set down theoretically, even using this physics of 0 point energy. You can manipulate mass and inertia, and you don't do it by manipulating the mass and inertia of the object. You do it by manipulating the mass and the inertia, or the 0 point energy of the region around the object. And that's
Mm.
what changes the mass and the inertia. So don't think about it as, when you look at me, don't manipulate me. You're not going to change my weight or my composition. Change the 0 point energy around me, and then you just displace me from space time. And when you do that, now I don't have mass and inertia anymore. Now I just float freely. That's the secret. That's what people need to understand. That's what Eric Davis, the expert of wormholes, has basically been saying, is that, so to answer the question people ask, like, what happened with the plane? Well, we can't know for sure. The answer could be anything. It could be just set down, like down on the ground anywhere. What do I think happened to it? I think it showed up in the air and was still flying somewhere else, because I don't think that the technology we're looking at those videos has been advanced to the point where you can just point to point teleport the object and set it down anywhere you want yet in 2014. Do they have that now in 2024? Much more plausible. But the crazy part is, when I watch these videos, is not only do I not think it's aliens, not only do I think it's the United States military, but I think it's like not probably the first iteration, but an early version of this teleportation technology, and that it can actually be advanced much further beyond this, even to the point where we could have like stargates. Just from looking at those videos and understanding what that means to physics, it opens the door to some pretty crazy stuff.
Okay. All right. So now I want to talk about certain things that you mentioned. One of the things is I think it was under your video that you posted on your channel, Ashton for oh sorry, I keep forgetting the word video to letter. In the letter, he talks about Randall Carlson, right?
The gray bearded man is the key, and he probably has no idea that he is.
Yeah.
So then somebody posted that Asian civilizations, and then you wrote, you think something dark is going on in relation to this technology being from ancient civilizations. So what dark thing is going on? Because I've been following around the Carlson, Graham Hancock, read all the books. So I wasn't sure where the dark thing is there. Why is it, spooky like that?
Spooky thing for me is just this idea that our civilization is being managed. Maybe that's not spooky for other people, but there are people that know that there's physics that mainstream academia has no idea about. There's people that know this technology, they know what's coming, they know what the next iteration of technology already is. And this shouldn't be surprising either, because we see people abusing this all the time, and it gets called out all the time. People in Congress and politics that are making all this money, they're doing this because they know what's coming in the future from the technological perspective. People have no problem believing that there is corruption in media, corruption in pharmaceuticals, corruption in government. People don't realize that this same exact corruption exists in technology and scientific advancement as well.
No, I
Sorry,
mean,
you seem
what's
like
the
you want to say
why? No, but I thought that. Do you know anything about the ancient civilizations where this technology is from?
Well, the point being here is that if this technology is ancient, then it would make sense that there's people that have been hoarding in secret and having this technology in secret. Or like the connection for me to Randall Carlson and ancient history is, well, kind of goes with Graham Hancock. Well, what if 12,000 years ago humanity was reset? What if there were cities, civilizations on this planet, and they've now all been buried underneath rock and ice, and the civilizations are gone? We can't see them anymore, but they existed, and they had advanced technology. And then we lost that technology, and we basically reset ourselves back to hunter-gatherers and started up again. But some people perhaps retain this technology. Maybe they built bases underground. Maybe they were able to survive with this technology underground or underwater because it's that advanced. And that's really the ultra terrestrial hypothesis now at that point. There's a lot of crossover between a lot of these hypotheses, which is this idea that somebody retained this knowledge. And for whatever reason, they've decided that the broader humanity does not deserve it or does not earn it, or whatever you want to think. I don't know what their exact reasons are. But my belief is that the reason why they haven't given this to us, and they've been lying about this for a long time, decades, if not hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, is because they're absolutely certain beyond any doubt that we will destroy ourselves with the technology. And I think they're right. That's the dark side.
You mentioned also that our planet could be a prison planet. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, if you think about what I just described to you, you'd go, well, that's a prison. And I go, yes, we're in a prison planet. Whether or not it's, reptilian alien overlords or AI, or if it's us maintaining that prison over ourselves, who cares? It's a prison. We're the prisoners. We're basically the cattle at the slaughterhouse. And I'm the guy going, this is a slaughterhouse where we're all about to be destroyed. And they're going, look at that dumb Ashton guy, conspiracy theorist, thinks that this is all a big, a big prison that we're in, and that we're just a farm for food. Like, yes, we are. We're just a farm for food. Doesn't it kind of make sense? Look at our short lifespans. Look at how technology is fed to us. Look at how nobody thinks for themselves, and we all just do whatever the authority tells us. Yeah, we're in a prison.
Right. So you also said that the world is holographic.
Mhm.
And I also want to know, you said that somebody approached you about Earth being flat and they wanted to talk to you. And you said that you could, I actually was surprised because you said you could actually entertain it based on all the research and studying physics, that you could actually entertain it. And I got really curious.
Yeah, those two things are somewhat connected. So the biggest thing that you have to realize, like, okay, so teleportation is real. How? How don't have to be a PhD physicist, but how is it possible that I can instantly go from one point to 1 point over here? How is that possible? I can only come up with one logical conclusion. Distance is an illusion, right? That's it. Distance must be an illusion. Whatever we call distance, the point between here and here, that's an illusion based on our perceptions. That's the only conclusion I can come to. If that's true, then how do you define that? How do you describe that? We already have a word for it. It's called a hologram. A hologram is something where we project from a two-dimensional space, from a plate, right? This is my plate. We project a hologram from the plate, and it produces a three-dimensional image. That's what our reality is. It's an analog to that. How do we know that for sure? Well, because the plate, you know, the beauty of one of these hologram plates, you can cut the plate in half just like this, and now you only have one half of the plate. It still has all of the information about the image, even when you cut it in half. What? How can that be possible? Well, it tells you that all the information about the image is stored on the boundary of the plate, and each point on the plate has all of the information about the image. Wow. That theory, that idea is the holographic principle, what I just described to you. The idea that all the information about what you're seeing can be stored on the boundary in a lower dimensional space, just like that, is the same concept of I can be playing Minecraft and I can feel like I'm in a three-dimensional environment. But technically, I'm just on a microchip or on a hard drive inside the computer down there. And if you were to say, what's the distance between my point in Minecraft now and the point 1,000 blocks away? What's the distance? You would say, well, it's 1,000 blocks. I would say there is no point. There is no distance. I can just teleport there if I want to teleport there. That's how our world works. That's how our world works. That's the mind-bending aspect of the reality of the physics and the science, is that our world is a hologram. It's a simulation, if you want to think of it like that. It doesn't mean it's fake. Of course it's real. We're having a real conversation. You're a real person. I'm a real person. But it doesn't mean that the nature of how our reality is projected is an illusion, right? Distance is an illusion. And we can break through that illusion using science, using physics, using electromagnetism.
And it also applies to the universe. Everything is in one sort of what was there was TV show on Apple where there are different dimensions, but the coordinates are the same.
Is
So
that the dark matter one? I haven't watched that one yet on
is
Apple
it,
TV, dark matter.
yeah, they open the doors and then they end up in different parallel worlds, but the
So there
coordinates
are
are
two
always
ways
the
to
same.
reconcile this. One is superdeterminism, which is deterministic reality, which would mean that if I go back in time or start messing around with causality, whatever I did always happened. So if I go back in time and meet my younger self, that can only be possible if I already met my older self when I was younger. And maybe I just forgot or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That would be deterministic reality. The other interpretation is called many worlds. And the many worlds interpretation is like the doorway thing, where there might be infinite universes, and every choice I make opens a new universe. And I'm walking through the different universes, picking my path. I actually have no hard opinion one way or another at the moment. My opinion is just that I don't know. We don't have data to say at the moment.
Yeah.
No, there's no hard data. And how would we even prove it one way or another? I don't even know. To me, the first step is, well, just give me whatever the free energy is that you're hiding related to all this, because when you look at it from this perspective of distance being illusion, it doesn't take very long to start getting to the realization that there is infinite potential energy out there stored in this computer simulation or whatever we're in all the time. Because then you start to realize that we can just break into the code. We can hack into the source code of how this projection, this simulation is being projected onto our reality. And that's fundamentally what you're seeing in the MH370 videos, is that the defense contractors, the government, they've figured out how to hack in to the source code of reality itself, space-time itself. And that's sixth generational warfare, which is going to be control over space and time itself. It's also probably why Space Force was created. Space Force wasn't just created to offshoot stuff that the Air Force could have done. Like it's going to be a whole new echelon of warfare.
So what about flat Earth?
Oh yeah, so the flat Earth. So taking that same concept, I mean, This is the part where if flat earthers were more cunning, they would say, well, the answer is yes, the Earth's flat because you just said everything is, all the information is stored on the boundary, right? So if you were to like really remove the illusion that we're seeing, what you're going to be left with is something that's flat. It's really just that simple. Do any of them ever say this? No. But that would be great. Instead, they go, no, the Earth's shaped like a pancake. And you go, well, can you just like model the sun in one of these for me? Just using basic geometry? Because basic geometry pretty much rules it out. Plus, no disrespect to flat earthers, but I'm pretty sure that if the Earth were flat, the other planets would also be flat. And we can just look up and see the other planets spinning, which proves that they are spherical. So,
Right. What I found really curious is the fact that how the emergency landings that didn't, have you heard about that argument that there were flights and the airplanes had to land like in an emergency, and then when they landed, it didn't make sense if the Earth was spherical. It made sense if it was like straight line. Have you heard that one?
No, that hasn't really. I haven't seen that, but there could be magnetic and there could be certain anomalies like related to some of this stuff too that can cause gravitational anomalies as well, which in that theory could cause time dilation. So there were actually a couple. There's at least one case. I don't know if it's the Frank Velt. Can't remember the guy's name. There's at least one case though where it's been speculated that that maybe some electrical conditions in the atmosphere caused for this guy to like get to his destination like 30 minutes before it should have been possible or something like that. And with gravity, when you manipulate gravity, you manipulate space-time. So technically any gravity manipulation vehicle, a warp drive, wormhole, anything that can produce something like that is a time travel machine. And it is going to do what we spoke about earlier, which is dilate time. So one answer to how is it possible that those islanders saw the plane 4 hours later? Well, what if the plane got time dilated? What if the people got dilated? Or what if with this technology, they can hold something in superposition, which would mean that it's just displaced from space and time and can reappear anytime they want. So they could just lock it. They could have it disappear here from our outside perspective. And then all of a sudden, 4 hours later, it just appears over here. Physically, from a physics perspective, you can't rule that out. And that's where it starts to get like, okay, well, then how do you know anything's real if you can just cheat? If you can just cheat the system, basically. Well, it's hard. But the good news is this case, the MH370 case, has so much evidence that you can actually come to a pretty solid story, even if certain pieces of evidence are hard to rationalize.
Okay. So one of the last questions. You said that birds follow the aerodynamics rule and then the bees don't. Can you explain that? How does it work?
Yeah, well, truthfully, I don't know. I'm mostly just trolling people when I post about the bugs being anti-gravity. But the point being that a lot of these things, I like to point out things that conventional science struggles with, right? Three-body problem is another good example. We can't even model our own solar system using our view of cosmology. Do people realize that? This isn't a joke. Just look at the model of our solar system. Look at how big Jupiter is. It's on the outside of us. Jupiter should have slowly tugged us away from the sun over the last several billion years. We should have been ejected out into, outside of the solar system. We can't even explain why that is. If you were to ask a mainstream physicist, they're just going to say we just made the math work. They're just literally just made something up to try to make it work. So this is also true of like bugs. Have people looked at the side of some of these beetles and bugs that are able to fly? Their bodies are like 10 times the size. I don't know what they probably have some ratio they use for the wings, but their wings are not big enough to support the size of these bugs. And even when you look at the motion of it, it doesn't make sense. How is it that just flapping my wings back and forth is going to allow me net positive thrust upward? The way birds are flying is not the same way that hummingbirds fly and bugs fly. And the other thing is and this is again, just thinking logically, don't use advanced, doesn't take any book learning. If I vibrate my hands, if I flap my hands really, really fast back and forth, I'm going to get tired out really, really quickly. part of the thing with birds is they're not flapping their wings that much. They're just soaring, right? They're just flying in the sky because the hardest part is the liftoff part. But the bugs, they're vibrating their wings super fast. The reason why I connected it to anti-gravity is resonance, because clearly the secret to their flight is resonance. You can imagine you're winding up, you're ramping up the RPMs, right? Like, and you get to the sweet spot, the resonant point. Once you get to the resonant point, you just start floating.
It's like a cars. You twist the cars and then they just go, the wheels.
See, I like you. You're smart. Yes, it's much like that. It's ramping up the RPMs, and that's what frequency is, vibration. And resonance is when you hit the sweet spot. So imagine like a wine glass where you're increasing the RPMs, and you're making that wine glass like, and then it shatters. This is the same concept. They're hitting a resonant frequency, and then boom, now they're just levitating. And somehow they've got it where what they do with their wings to create this vibrational frequency is low energy, very low energy use, because otherwise you would get tired out. To me, this is way different than what birds are doing, not even close to the same thing. And that's why I bring up that this is, in my mind, I think this is like a sort of 0 point energy related flight, because there's somehow, why is resonance, why is frequency allow flight? Isn't space-time empty? If space is empty, then this must be somehow interacting with the medium, in this case, the air or something. So it doesn't quite add up from our conventional perspective. And I've read people try to explain it, and it doesn't really add up again. So this is one of those things where, if you look at it, there's not a very good conventional explanation for how this stuff's possible. And yet, if you look at it with a 0 point energy view, then it becomes very easy to understand, is that there's this energy all around us. And the same reason why a gecko can stick to the ceiling without having anything actually like stuck into the ceiling. The gecko, all it has is little feelers, and they act as little surface area things. And it's so small that the surface area on those feelers causes an attractive force with whatever it's attached to, and causes a suction. That is literally using quantum mechanics for a gecko, which is a large visible lizard, to stick to the ceiling and defy gravity. So if a gecko is doing that and it's that big, why can't a bug that's much, much smaller than that geckos eat, why can't they manipulate a very similar effect? I think they can. And I think they do.
Right. So watching you for quite some time, and I didn't think that anything can surprise me, right? I was like, okay, I've seen it all, I heard it all. But recently you said that you think that Dave Rossi has gone through some age reversal thing. And I was like, I need to talk to him. What's going on? Can you explain?
Yeah, no, he definitely did. Yep. Now, the whole blue alien download thing, that's just a cover. Dave definitely, he's like, must be some sort of long-term CIA spook. There's probably some famous person that he is, right? And they reversed his aging back, and now he has to have a new identity. I haven't looked enough into him, even though he's a good friend of mine now at this point, but absolutely believe there's just no way. He's 26 years old, and he knows more about physics and electrical engineering than most PhDs I've ever spoken to. And the guy is just incredible. In fact, I'm planning on reviewing his interview he did with Jesse Michaels the other week, because people have really glossed over that too much. He goes through a lot of depth on a lot of the physics, very much connected to the stuff that I've been talking about. And he's a pretty connected guy. He knows a lot of people in the UFO field and the engineering field and black projects field. So but yeah, I'm joking with him. And the thing too is that people were giving him shit about him telling his story about his blue alien download that made him so smart or whatever. Man, who cares? Everybody's got their own origin story or whatever it is. Judge people based on the merits of the science and the physics that they bring up, not based on where they think they got the information from. I got my information from watching 2 videos of a plane getting disappeared out of the sky. Right? Like, that's what led me down this journey. So is that any less ridiculous than saying that, you had an entity, tell you the secrets of the universe? I don't know.
Okay. I do not to this day understand how come you haven't been on Joe Rogan podcast. It's so crazy and bizarre, and I've been watching him for such a long time, and I don't claim I know him. I obviously don't know him, but watching him so long, I think I kind of know him. And you are like top and on his top list, and that's one of the reasons why he saw your videos and messaged you right away, because that's the impulse you have, and that's what he does. And the fact that you still haven't been there, and he follows you, and then he starts talking randomly about all of a sudden about anti-gravity technology, but your name is never mentioned. It's like, do you know Navalny? Like, Putin was so afraid of him, he would never ever utter his name, because if he did, people will look him up and will actually find
Yeah.
out that he's not the crazy person that everyone, the mainstream media in Russia, was making him to be. So it's just like your name cannot be uttered or mentioned. It's just crazy. And also, what's funny is there are certain people who are not invited to Joe Rogan, but they get invited to PPD. PPD podcasts, they do invite the people, they sort of
Yeah.
say that we do have, or Whitney Webb, for example, Candace Owens, they cannot be, they're not on Joe Rogan, but PBD does. The fact that you haven't been up on PBD, it's crazy. It already means, and by the way, one of the guys who is on that show has a separate show. In that show, he mentioned your name very briefly, like super quickly. So they know about you, but you're not, it should be already super suspicious, extremely suspicious, that and by the way, I don't think Joe Rogan, I mean, I know that you're gonna be probably one day on his show, so you're saying nice things, but I don't think that he's dumb, and I don't think that he doesn't understand, or the fact that he said, oh, it was debunked, it's so ridiculous. Of course he doesn't think it's debunked. Of course that's not the reason.
Yeah, especially a guy like Joe Rogan, right? He said some pretty crazy things. It is weird. Yeah, for sure it's weird. And this is what I said early on, is that, like, when we first started realizing, oh, these videos are actually real, this isn't even a joke. And I think you've been following for a while. It's like, watch how one of the huge benefits is you can watch how people react, you know? And this is kind of like with the Edward Lin thing too, is like, if these videos aren't real, why is everyone acting like they are? If these videos weren't real, Joe Rogan would be loving to talk to me about them, because we could joke about them and blah, blah, blah. Ooh, somebody made these fake videos, blah, 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 right? Like, but that's not the case. It's silence. That would also be the case. Like, these UFO people in this, in this community, these talking heads and what have you, they'd all be jumping all over this if this, like, wasn't so controversial. But it's because of the nature of this actually harming national security. Right. The only conclusion we can make at this point is that people have been told to not talk to me because these videos harm national security. Like, that's actually a criminal act that was conducted by the United States Navy, hiding this technology. This technology is a doomsday weapon. This is beyond nukes. This is national security issue. If the videos were fake, these people would be jumping down. They would be saying my name to ridicule me. But like you said, like with Navalny, you can't say his name at all, because then people will realize the truth. When you are silent about somebody, it's not because they're wrong, it's because they're right. When someone's wrong on the internet or anywhere, you have a million people trying to jump down them, to dunk on them, to make fun of them or whatever. When someone's right, then it's just silence. And that's the same thing with Edward Lin. I called him out. I said he leaked the videos. He should have reached out to me and said, I'm not the guy that leaked the videos. I can show you that I'm not the guy. This is what I really did, blah, blah, blah. Instead, he's changing his name. What? So, yeah, some of these people I'm suspicious about, but at the same time, so what? Like you said, I would still talk to them. Even though I'm suspicious about Joe Rogan and his intentions related to all this, I'd still talk to him, because it's important that we just clear the air, that we just have a normal conversation about this. The reality is, yes, it harms national security. The reality is, yes, it's going to allow some of our adversaries to catch up. The reality is also, though, yes, this is potentially free energy and technology that could take us to the stars. So for some of these podcasters, I think they need to get their priorities right. Like, I get hiding stuff for national security, but when it gets to free energy and stuff where, like, it's going to change our civilization, It's beyond the line for me.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the right word, but it's like gatekeeping. Like, who
Oh,
gave you the right to gatekeep? Like, why do you think you're the person who should be doing that? If you have the platform, and there are so many people, like 200 something people died on that airplane, and yeah, I just find it weird. But what happened on Danny Jones is crazy, because Danny Jones podcast was. I've been watching him as well, and then when I saw you were on him, I was like, super great. I was super excited. How did I miss this? So, and I watched it, and it was so cringe. It was so awkward that I was not able to watch it till the end, because I've never expected that from Danny Jones. It was so unnatural. None of his videos are like that. None of them. This one stands out. This was absolutely irrational behavior, attacking, being so rude and being so aggressive. And I waited and waited, and I thought, when are you gonna get up and leave or slap him in his face? I was just gonna, I was, and your poker face the whole time. You're focused and composed, and you're replying in such a neutral way. And I thought, wow. I think that's the moment I knew you're the right person to be doing this, because nothing phased you. How did you keep composure?
It did go back to my poker days, honestly. Because, yeah, you can tell, you start to realize when somebody's starting to come after you. And the crazy part was, like, Danny was so dishonest. I've actually, if anything, I've been nice to him for this whole time. He was way more dishonest than even it comes across in the video. Like, he did a whole fake break where he was still recording it after he had us, like, take our, like, things off and pretend like we were on a break, starting to make small talk where, like, I don't know if he was thinking, like, I don't know if in his mind he thought like I was some kind of elaborate hoaxer and he was going to catch me out or something. Like, I actually think he was told by people that like I'm some hoaxer person. You expose my grift or whatever like that. And they could have been spooks, they could have been Redditors or whatever. But I called him even beforehand and was like, "Hey, just went on with your show with your buddy Danny Jones or Julian Dory, and he tells me you guys are best friends that talk every single day. And Julian Dory just treated me like shit on his own show. I don't really want to go on your podcast anymore. I told Danny Jones this. Oh, no, no, no. It's not going to be anything like that. No, no, it's nothing like that." And Julian Dory had just told me he's going to have a major studio recreate the videos. This guy was so all in on me that he's talking shit to me after our interview about how he's going to get his buddies a major studio, talking himself up. The dude's an egotistical maniac, talking to himself about how cool he is, and he's going to get somebody to recreate the videos. So I go on Danny Jones, and Danny Jones just starts smirking at me and all this shit. Some of you guys didn't see it because they kind of edited it out, but he's like smirking at me in the middle of the interview, and I'm like, this is so weird. So I'm like, the best way is just keep chill. Who cares, right? And I knew that he was going to do something, and then they pulled this video up by the corridor crew, and I actually expected him to have like a video recreation because that's what his buddy Julian Dory told me he was going to do. Of course, they didn't have any video recreation. It was impossible for anyone to recreate the videos. So even the corridor crew couldn't recreate the videos. They couldn't even recreate a few seconds of the videos. And it was honestly embarrassing for the corridor crew. I do hope that they look back and they look at this saga and they improve themselves as human beings, because they're some of the worst people I've ever seen on YouTube. Just disgusting people. And, to make a video or a pre-recorded video where you're going to try to dunk on somebody in the middle of a podcast like that is one of the scummiest things any human being can possibly do, where the person can't even react to you, where you don't even tell them that it's going to happen. And everything the guy said was a lie. And I'm listening to it and I just start taking notes. And Danny was so upset that I was taking notes that he kept telling me to look at the screen because he was trying to get a recording of me looking nervous, even though I wasn't. Well, all I was doing is just sitting there taking notes because I wanted to make sure I got down every point the guy was making so that I could address him, because I wasn't given a response. I wasn't given an opportunity to respond in real time. And so then I addressed every single point and point out that the guy is lying about every claim. The clouds are moving. It's not daytime. It's not contrails. I point out all these flaws. I point out that the effect doesn't match. I show an image proving the effect doesn't match, all in real time. And Danny's response after I go, "Why are you listening to someone who's literally lying to you multiple times?" He goes, "But he's an expert." And he starts getting angry at me. And I'm
It's
just
just, but
like, dude, what?
the thing is, his reaction was very artificial, not natural. He was not natural. The way that he kept interrupting you, because when you want to interrupt somebody, it comes naturally. But the way he tried, it was so obvious he was doing it on purpose, and the whole thing was extremely cringe. I was not able to get through it. And Corridor Cruise was just what pulled up a Photoshop, and then, oh, you can do thermal, and then they said, oh, there's a stock video, and yeah, it was just a joke, to be
Maybe
honest.
the Corridor Crew should make a thermal video for fake thermal military video. Since there's none out there, maybe they should go make one. Tell us how long it takes, live stream it for us. They said they can make it in a couple hours. It's been
No, they just put a
over
Photoshop. They just did a Photoshop image of it. That's all that we got.
But I do want to point out too that Danny Jones talks to CIA spooks all the time, and so does Julian Dory. In fact, I'd say over half their interviews are people that are feds and spooks in the government. So it doesn't surprise me at all that out of all the podcasts I've done, those are basically the only two ever that try to do anything remotely like that. And just as a word of warning for other people out there, anytime a podcaster tries to get you to sign something, some type of thing, a release, just say no. Unless it's a huge, huge podcaster, don't do it. And then I do want to point out also that apparently a man named Shawn Naylor, who's another spook and guy that writes for the New York Times, he was on Danny Jones 9 months ago, September 2024, talking about how the CIA justifies extrajudicial executions, which means I'm never going overseas. But also, turns out Shawn Naylor is the brother-in-law of Edward Lynn, the guy that I identified as leaking the videos. I never told anybody this until last week, but I already figured out who Lynn's sister was, Jenny Lynn Naylor. She married Shawn Naylor in 2018, and I had been sitting on this information because I had been trying to contact them behind the scenes for the last month. So when people came at me after I had kind of exposed Edward Lynn and his new name and everything like that, realized I had already been trying to contact his family and everyone to get in touch with them, and they're all ghosting me, which is weird because, well, this guy's going on Danny Jones, but also his family was trying to say that the case against Edward Lynn was all a fabrication by the military when it was first announced in 2015. And they wanted to correct the record. Well, here I am to correct the record, and now they're all silent. Now they're all going dark because they didn't want the truth to come out. What they wanted was for people to realize that Edward Lynn was not a spy. What they didn't want was for people to realize what he really leaked, which was the truth about MH370.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. Last question. Okay, because if I don't ask this question, I won't be able to sleep. How on earth does your last name have the word 4 orbs, not 2, not 3, 4 orbs? I did not make the connection. I remember in one of you got the new neon
full
sign
marketing
and
right now. I've got it all on right now. I got all my merch on, rocking it. Yeah, that part was the craziest part. And I mean, I didn't know there was going to be 4 orbs. It was actually Dave Rossi before, who's the one that when I first spoke to him on my podcast, he said, we did a couple of interviews back and forth. He said that, what if there's a 4th orb? And it's like basically like a rubber band where it's like wherever the plane disappears, remember that endothermic event where it just slingshots and now it just appears over here. And you need a 4th orb to determine where it's going to show back up. That's it. That was a genius thought. And I still think that's the most likely. It's not necessarily how it works. How the hell do I know how teleportation works? But it's a good thought. And yes, my last name is Forbes, as you can see down here at the bottom of the screen. And it fits perfectly. And this is one of those things where I would advise people when something like this comes up, just lean into it. And that's what I did. Is like, why would I fight it? Right. It turns out my name's exactly 4 orbs.
When did you make the connection?
Well, this is my brand.
When did you realize?
It was probably a few months in. So I started streaming November 2023. So it's been a little bit over a year. And it was probably a couple months in that we started to realize, like, yeah, it was like a month or a month and a half in. And at first it was just kind of a joke, Ashon Forbes. And then it just got more and more real. And then now people were like asking, why aren't you making merch? I want to have a t-shirt. I want to have a hoodie. I want to have a sweater. And so finally we just said, okay, fine. Guess we'll do it. It's cool though. I like it.
It's so crazy. It's not cool. It's crazy. It's insane. How is it even possible? And even Salvatore Pais in one of the videos, he actually mentions it. Do you remember? Because it's so crazy. But yeah,
he's a fun guy and he's great. And his patents are all real too, by the way. Like I don't know what it takes for people to wake up. I mean, we've got patents that are in the U.S. Navy that in their name that describe all the stuff we're seeing in those videos. We got Sal Pais, who is the Navy patent owner who wrote the patents, saying that he knew what was going to happen in those videos. I mean, I don't know. I think people are slowly waking up to it, but admittedly, I understand why it takes a lot of people some time, because this is something so far beyond where we were at like just a couple years ago. I mean, we're talking about like skipping ahead like hundreds of years in technology practically overnight. Of course, people aren't going to be, it's not going to be some smooth transition. People are going to struggle with this a lot.
Yeah. And I think the moment when you talked to Salvatore Pais on your show, that was the moment that everybody was supposed, even when somebody had any doubts, whatever, that was the moment where the doubts were supposed to dissipate. That was the moment. I don't know why it doesn't seem to help, because recently I talked to one or two people and they still think that the videos are not real. It's just, oh, I don't know. But
it doesn't surprise me, and I don't push people. This is why, like, guys, when I walk around, I'm not like out there every day trying to convince every person I run across. I like don't ever talk about the videos unless, I mean, sometimes circumstances come up. Like one time it was a, Thursday, I was at work, we were about to travel back home, and I started started bringing it up with one of these providers that I work with, and he was into it, and he loved it. So there's fun times where, like, if you're in the right moment and you bring it up, it can be fun and people get engaged with it. But you can never really get too mad at somebody for thinking it's fake. Would have you realize that the brainwashing is so powerful that a lot of
yeah,
people, most people on this planet, and smart people that are your friends and family,
yeah,
they're stuck in the programming. It's literally like the Matrix. They're stuck in the program, so endeared to it that they don't understand what it is to be outside of it anymore. And when you present something that's this far outside the paradigm, like there's like a reflex to reject it. And even I did it initially. A lot of us, we probably all did. And this is where, if you do want to push, this is where you kind of just, you bring up some of those key anti-brainwashing questions. Like, how does a plane crash without leaving a debris field? Like,
yeah,
how does the government not see the plane? And that's how I would go about it if you want to. But again, don't pressure people into it.
yeah,
It's one of those things where people are going to slowly wake up over time. And the benefit for the people that wake up early is that basically the future. I mean, where
yeah.
technology is headed.
Yeah. To me, it was magical. When I saw the videos first, I got really excited. I was like, this is magic. And then you disappointed me, because then you explained how it happened and it was not magic anymore. So I was like, damn. But
Me too, though. Me too. When you first look at it, it's funny to listen to the first podcast I ever did with Investigate Earth, Chad and Sherry, where I'm going, they're going to kill me. This is 1,000 years. This is aliens at the plane. Technology 1,000 years more beyond where we're at. Because even at that point, I'm like, what? This is magic. This is just magic. Somebody did magic on the plane. But then you start digging into it, you're like, oh, no, it's not magic. And you peel the layers back and you're like, oh, no, we've been researching this for decades and decades and decades. And they're
yeah,
telling people publicly we haven't figured it out. But is that true? It's
yeah,
less magical, but at the same time, I think it still does give hope and inspiration for people, where it's like there's more to be discovered out there, a lot more.
yeah. Thank you so much. We have to stop because I took so much of your time. Thank you
you're
so
good.
much for coming on today.
No problem. Thank you for having me on. This was an awesome conversation. We should do it again.